Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you once more. And Lord, as always, we submit to you. And Lord, we invite you in our midst. And Lord, I just pray that you would prepare our hearts and our minds to receive from your word. Father, I pray that your Spirit would be upon John and fill John, and that your words would come from his lips. Father, I pray that he would have your heart. I pray that all of us would be open and attentive and discerning, Lord. We ask for your wisdom, your discernment, your knowledge and understanding. And Father, we just long to learn more about you and draw closer to you. So we bless you and thank you. Hashem Yeshua. Amen.
Thank you. Last week we talked about the existence of God, and I told you it was going to be a multi-week thing, and it is. I'm really excited about it. I hear so much controversy coming from you all and from the world about why what we believe is ridiculous. There's no foundation for it. In truth, you certainly can't find it historically backed up or scientifically backed up or archaeologically backed up or astronomically backed up, on and on. Name the science or field of study, and people are claiming that there's no evidence. And I am up to here with it, because actually just the opposite is true. There is so much evidence for what we believe. If it was known without prejudice, the entire world would come around to realizing this creator. So in that context, I decided that I wanted to do a series that focused on giving us some tools to use with people, and maybe ourselves. Maybe you're struggling with, gosh, I'm being overwhelmed by the world and the radio and the TV and all the evidence coming out of Google and Yahoo or whatever else your scientific sources are sourced in. And you get overwhelmed with the realization that there's a group of people out there that have no respect, and they think it's legitimate for what we believe. And so maybe this will help buttress your faith, but in addition and ultimately, we're drawn to be lights to the world, right? And if you don't, what is truth in the Bible? Light, right? So if you don't have any truth, it can't shine very brightly, right? So what we're going to attempt to do is infuse you with more light, and guess what? When you have more light, God is going to take advantage of the situation. He's going to use you more. How many of us want to be used more? With more light, He's going to bring more of those that need the light that you have into your life, so you can represent God to them. So last week, just in quick review, some of this material is helpful to be in context, so I'll review a little bit. We talked about blind faith and how God never asks for blind faith. And we looked up scores of verses that showed that the disciples, Paul, etc., went out and showed evidence for the people to believe that they were trying to witness to. They didn't just say, you're a bum, you need salvation, you have your sins forgiven, you need to believe. It says they reasoned with the scriptures. They brought out evidence to substantiate the truth that they were promoting. Is that a scary thought to you? Can you do that? That's what Paul, that's what the disciples, that's what these people that had converted into realizing that Yeshua was their Savior. That was one of the hallmarks. Yes, they also had signs and miracles, but that's not where you end. Signs and miracles and spectacular things, in Revelation 11, 13, what does it say?
Yes, sir.
Satan does the same thing. In fact, He's going to be able to call fire down from heaven. Now let me tell you, in my book, that ranks pretty high, right? That's a pretty big one. I think Moses beats it with the Red Sea thing, right? But the fire down from heaven, that's a pretty good miracle. And how many people would be drawn to a person capable of doing that caliber of miracle? Many people, yes?
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty showy. Is that what should sway us? What does God say? What does the Word of God say? It talks about their fruit. Is lightning out of the sky a fruit? No. That's just a sign. Satan can pull off one of those. The false prophet will pull off one of those. What's fruit?
Fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace.
Love,
Joy,
that joy.
suffering.
And the one the world needs most of all, somebody said it, peace. Right? Are you a walking... Are you a person walking down the road when people see you, do they go, wow, that guy always has it together. He's always peaceful. He always has those fruits. He's always willing to give. He's always willing to give insight. He always has light. He always has a stability, or she always has a stability around about her. That's our goal. If you don't, that's okay. But that's your goal, right? So, the believers in the world have been attacked for what they believe, and unfortunately, the church has not done a very good job, in my estimation, in building up people so they can give answers to everyone that would ask. We don't, and I'm not talking, remember we covered this last time, I'm not talking about biblical proofs. We all should be able to substantiate our faith from the Bible, but how many can do it from what we observe? God never asks for blind faith, does he? Remember we covered that last time? In fact, let me read again what he does say amongst many other passages. He doesn't ask for blind faith. He always gives us evidence. Romans 1:18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which is known about God is evident within them. For God made it evident to them. So we should never ask the dumb question, well, God, that guy never had a chance to know God because he lived in deep, darkest Africa. So thereby, your religion is ridiculous. No, it says right here. It says, because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. Yes, you have to believe that, but we are not left with something, we're left with a good answer. And the answer is, well, how do you know that God did not make himself evident? You don't have to point out Romans 1:19 here. How do you know? You didn't even know the person. How do you know that God didn't make himself evident to them? Because in fact you know it's true. And maybe he said no. How do you know? So your argument is just built on faith, and he didn't. That's what you're accusing me of. In fact, yours is blind. Mine actually is substantiated by Romans 1:19. It goes on. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, even understood through that which has been made, so that they are without excuse. There's going to be a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth, isn't there? When God does finally bring this all to a closing chapter, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to, it's going to be worse than, oh, rats, I flubbed up, isn't it? It's going to be like Matthew 24 and 25, those parables where they say there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's going to be a lot of hatred, actually. There's going to be a lot of regret. Because God did make himself evident, but people said no. So, this verse also can be used for my next point in review of what we talked about last week, which is, obviously you can prove God exists by using the biblical text. People that disrespect the biblical text, you can't use the biblical text to support a point that they don't believe, right? So you have to use extra biblical. And so what does the Bible itself talk about? Is there any extra biblical evidence? And he says right here, we just read it, since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes and his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood by his creation, by what has been made, so that they're without excuse. So what that means is nobody's going to be able to go, well, I was unaware that you, God, existed. Oh, they claim that. It's interesting. You really should go and YouTube some of these atheists in debates. And what you'll pick up, they're all men. I haven't ran into any women debaters yet. They're atheists. I'm sure they're out there. But I haven't run into any of them. But all these guys, it's like you can tell by the tone and the tenor of their vocabulary that they've had a bad experience. They are angry at God. Like God took their wife away and they don't understand why, so they threw him out like we throw a baby out with the bathwater. And I think that's what many in our society do as well. We're angry at something we don't even believe. Well, how's that possible? We're angry at God and then we diss him, so we claim that he doesn't even exist. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? But there's tons of extra biblical evidence for God, and that's what these set of talks are going to be all about. Last week I touched on some arguments that we're going to be talking about. The first one is the moral argument. Why is there evil in the world? We talked about that last week. We're going to talk about the fancy name is the cosmological argument. You sound real erudite. You can pull that word out to your friends. But it really is why does anything at all exist? So we'll be talking about that today. And the teleological argument, another really big word, but it just means the fine-tuning. We've discovered all kinds of fine-tuning attributes of the universe that should not be there if we just evolved. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the evidence for the resurrection of Yeshua, or Jesus. And then the fifth one, which is the internal spiritual witness. And, atheists laugh at that. But let me tell you, if we didn't have that, they'd be using that against us, right? Last week, we talked about the moral argument, and we discovered that atheists use the fact that there is evil in the world as evidence that shows that there's no creator, there is no God. Because why would a good God allow such a thing? How many have heard that argument? Yeah, many people have. And we talked about different ways to confront that type of argument, one of which is, I didn't use this argument until I think Gloria brought it out. She asked me a question. I think it's probably the best, because the other one that I used in the text here that I spoke from is a little more ethereal. It's difficult to get your mind wrapped around. But the one that I did use is more easy to understand, and that is that when you accuse God of being the creator of evil, it's an error. And the reason it's an error is because I'm going to formulate this correctly. What were we talking about?
I was saying that I had been asked if there is a God, why does he allow evil in the world? If he created everything, then he created evil. And that was how we were discussing.
Right.
So if God, how do you tell somebody that, yeah, there's evil in the world, but God's giving us a free choice that...
Right, so the idea is that if we can blame God for all the evils in the world, however, God created a system where he wanted to be loved. And in order to create that system of love, he had to create choice. Right? Which is a dangerous thing. We all learn, especially as parents, that when we give children choice, it's a very dangerous thing. Well, God wanted the same thing. And last week, in addressing this point, I think it's a very good argument to make that, well, if you remove choice, then you remove evil, but you also then remove love, and now God loses the actual goal that he wanted by creating us all, which he wants to be loved. Doesn't need to be loved, he wants to be loved by his creation. And in order to be loved, he has to allow choice. Right? He removed choice, you no longer... And we talked about how your computer loves you very much. No, it doesn't. It's not making moral choices about how it feels about you when you push a key down. Right? It just is robotically responding based off its programming. God wanted something more than that. Some people say, well, yeah, but what about situations where, somebody gets murdered by an evil person? That's where God should draw the line. He should disallow, he should intervene to the guy with that gun and screw up the mechanism so it doesn't fire. Okay, that's an interesting line. Somebody else might say, well, no, I think it should be a little tighter than that. God should intervene on all accidents. Because there's really no bad or good. Well, I guess there is bad guys. People that are speeding are the bad guys, right? So he's to intervene on all accidents. And somebody else may go, well, I think it should be tighter, but the world would be better, even if you would take away all lying. See where this is going?
Politics.
Pretty soon you have a what?
Politics?
See, we can decide various lines in the sand, whether it's something minor like stealing erasers from the boss to machine gunning down a whole group of people. Which one is, where are we going to draw it? I bet you, well, there's maybe 100 people in the room. I bet you we have 100 different lines in the sand, wouldn't there? Little nuances. You'd want to include the guy that was handicapped, and all kinds of clauses, but I bet you everybody would have a little different line in the sand. But which only goes to say that subjective analysis sometimes doesn't work very well. However, God is an objective agent, and He knows the best place to put that line. And the place He's put it in is I've already told them where the line in the sand is. We're the violators. We're the ones that choose to violate the line in the sand. God gave us Torah. God gave His Word. God wrote it in the stars. God wrote it in His creation. What is right, and He's written it on our hearts. What is right and wrong, hasn't He? And someday there's going to be consequences. And some people are going to be judged for what they have done. So these kinds of moral arguments are best. They stand better if you keep them only in the subjective world. But once you bring them into the light, they really don't stand the chance of survival in God's creation. God's creation, He wants people to choose to love Him. He doesn't want robotic love, because there's no such thing as robotic love. And in so doing, creating this kind of environment, He has to take a chance on His creation that they will love Him. But in the end, there will be a judge, won't there? We talked also last week about different kinds of religions and how they all have different kinds of ideas about the beginnings of the universe. Some say that it's always been here. We're in this flux of energy going in and out of existence. So it just perpetuates. It's in a perpetual cycle. Back before the 60s, 1960s, leading scientists, that was the theory that had the most people believing. So most scientists believe in some sort of steady state idea where the universe just has always been here. Unfortunately, it was disproven around 1960, and the Big Bang came into being. And the Big Bang basically says what some other religions say. Instead of always existing, the Big Bang and other religions say that it sprang out of nothing some 14 billion years ago. And we talked a little bit about that. And we talked a little bit about Judaism and some other religions, as well as Christianity. And we found out the vast majority of them either believe in the universe has always been here, or it sprang out of nothing, out of the Big Bang, or per many Bible believers, they believe in the same thing, but God was the agent to bring it into being. So they've come up with theories such as the the gap theory, which between verse 1 and verse 2 in Genesis 1, there's 14 billion years. And so the scientists can have all of their years that they need to have, and we slip all those years right in there. Others believe in the day-age theory. We talked a little bit about this. We'll talk more down the road. But the essence of it is each day represents billions, certainly hundreds of millions of years old. So God used evolutionary forces to bring you and me all together, sitting in this room today in 2016. There's a small, little contingent of people that are what I call biblical literalists. And their view is that no, the biblical text doesn't really give you that many billions of years wiggle room. The text is very specific and explaining itself. And these people, such as myself, believe that God created the universe, just as he said, in about a week. And I also believe that it's not multiple billions of years old, but that the best scientific evidence, so we're going to get to all this down the road when we get into the evolutionary and geological aspects of what we have to say. The evidence actually supports this young Earth model very strongly. We are not without evidence. In fact, I believe there's far more evidence for the literal interpretation of the first week explained in Genesis 1 than for any other theory. So my idea that I said last time is that if we can show during this expose that the universe has not always been here, or that it didn't spring out of nothing from nothing about 14 billion years ago in the form of a Big Bang explosion, then we can dispel almost every other religion, including atheism, and the only thing that will be left standing is the person that has a literal view of Genesis 1. So, with that, let's jump into the next argument. The cosmological argument. We talked about the moral argument last week. We're going to do the cosmological argument this week. Why does anything at all exist? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why should anything exist? Why should there just be nothing? And remember last week we also defined nothing. I'm not talking about a vacuum, because a vacuum is not nothing. Nothing is something, that's kind of a contradiction of terms, isn't it? Nothing is a state of being without time, without space, and without matter. So, a vacuum, what does it have? It doesn't have a whole lot of matter in it, right? But what does it have? Space, and it has time. All right, so we're not talking about a vacuum. We're talking about something that is really difficult for us to get our mind wrapped around. But that's what the leading scientists believe the Big Bang started it with. Nothing. No space, no time, and no matter. From that sprang this explosion that created everything. So why should there be anything? Some, we've touched on this, some believe that, well, no, it's actually, the universe is infinity. It's been here as an infinite amount of time. But leading mathematicians will readily recognize the fact that infinity is only a concept in our mind. It really has no play in nature. There's nothing that's infinite. Certainly in mathematical equations, you can use infinity, but it doesn't equate very well. And this infinity idea that we've been here all along really violates the second law of thermodynamics, doesn't it? It's the law of entropy. We'll touch more on that later. But in a nutshell, the second law says that in essence it's getting cold. We're running out of energy. You've heard those kind of remarks before. The universe as a whole is running out of energy. And it's called the law of entropy. And we'll talk more on that later. What it basically implies is that if we're running out of energy, it implies a beginning. Unless you've got energy factories on the far side of the moon, making energy all the time, but we haven't discovered any of those. So the best scientific thinking today is the Big Bang Theory. And the best Big Bang theorists communicate the idea that when the universe came into being, it created the space, matter, time continuum. The universe basically started from nothing, and nothing exploded into something. Obviously, you're sitting there going, oh, wait a minute, this cannot
Yeah.
be right,
Something out of that.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, you probably don't know the thermodynamic laws, but there's something in your core that's saying, this is, no, scientists think this? Yes. Yes. Routinely, regularly, this is what they believe, that nothing exploded into something. Well, on a scientific level, this violates several laws and principles. The first is the first law of thermodynamics, which says, from nothing, nothing comes. I mean, if you put a vacuum inside a jar and locked it up, and went to congregation, you wouldn't expect anything to be in it when you got home, right?
That's right.
Because, why?
Because it was
You
nothing
just
in it.
learned that things do just not pop out of nothing. It's within our experience to know that things don't pop out of nothing, from nothing, right?
That's right.
I mean, there's no one here worried about a horse that just manifested in your living room destroying your carpet, right? We're not worried about those kinds of issues, right? It just popped out of nothing. Why? Because our experience says that does not occur. Well, Einstein discovered a law that backed you up. The second problem is that it violates the principle of causality. The law of causality is a principle that says everything that is has to have a cause to come into being. Okay, so like you had a cause, your parents had a cause, and they, whether they liked it or not, they had you, right? And on back, there's everything can and does have a cause, and it can be discovered that has being today. And so the universe. And so, I'm back on. And so the universe has a cause. So from nothing, nothing comes. Well, nothing isn't a cause. Remember, it doesn't have any space, doesn't have any time, doesn't have any matter. How can it cause anything? Causality problem is a problem for the Big Bang theorists, isn't it? You need a causing agent. And let me tell you, on these debates, you should listen to the atheists try to worm their way out of the cause problem. It's very hilarious. So as the thinking goes, these people that propose these ideas of causality, and then they get to the point where they're not discovering a cause. The logic proceeds along this line. In order for the universe basically came out of nothing from nothing. And there's only two things that can fit these kinds of parameters that could cause something to come from nothing. And there's two types of things that could cause this. Abstract numbers is one of them. But they can't create anything. 5 plus 10 doesn't create anything, right? Can't create the universe coming into being. It fits the model, but they don't create anything. The only other thing that could possibly create something from nothing is a mind. A disembodied, non-physical entity that is about creating the universe. The only choice you really have. Some try to bypass the causality problem. And they say, well, you believers, you have the same problem. Your cause you claim is God. Well, their response is, well, who claimed God? Or who created God? And then who created God, who created God? And then who created God, who created God, who created God? That's fine. And there's two ways you can approach this kind of, because it's a great argument, but it's been around for decades. There's two ways you can approach this. You've got the wrong impression. Maybe you're thinking of the Buddhist God here. Or maybe the Hindu God. Maybe you're thinking of Jupiter. Or some of the Greek goddess and goddesses. But you're not thinking of the God of the Bible. Because he's a transcendent mind, all-powerful. He doesn't have a body. He doesn't need a cause because he is not temporal. He's lived forever. Those kinds of beings, of which there's only one, don't need a cause, do they? If you're outside of the time, space, matter continuum, you don't need a cause of which God is. The other argument, which is a little different of an argument, is, okay, let's say you go back and back and back, one cause after another cause after another cause, and finally you get to God, the Creator, and he's sitting there going, look at this. Isn't that a fabulous universe I created? And then he sits you down, and you stop for a moment. Before you ask the question, who created that guy, you just stop and go, okay, let's have a conversation with this God. And so you both sit down, maybe over some iced tea or something. I'm pretty sure he likes iced tea. Right? I mean, why not? And you sit down and you're having a conversation with him, and he goes, well, that's a valid question about who made me, but really, it's irrelevant. Because I made you. And I want to know what you did with my son. Did you believe in him? Or no? What did you do with my book that I gave you, if you were one of the lucky ones? How did you listen to me? I revealed myself in the creation. Did you follow that? I came to you, revealed myself, and showed and gave you directions for your life. How did you do with all of that stuff? Certainly you have the right to ask who made me, but I have the right because I created you, and I also have the right to judge you. And after I get done with all of that, then we can talk about who made me. But in the interim, you've got a problem. Because you didn't listen. You didn't respect. You didn't obey. You didn't hear. You didn't want to hear. And you didn't follow my directives for your life. That guy's got a problem. So this causality problem, one cause after another, is really mute when you finally get to God, the Creator, right? You could do the same thing with children. You know, they could come to mom and go, Mom, you have no right to judge me because who caused you? They're going, well, mom's just going to say, look, I caused you and I have the authority over you. It doesn't make any difference who caused me. Causality starts to break down when you mix causality with authority. And God has the authority to deal perfectly fine with His creation. And this is one of the reasons why, God is really a nice guy. Because He gives us moral guilt. We're fast trying to sear that guilt away, aren't we? Our society is searing it as fast as God's trying to put it back, aren't we? At every turn, we're removing even consciousness, awareness about sin. But nonetheless, God is about talking to us and revealing to us His truth. And He does that through our conscience. And we feel bad. As best we can to shove it aside, we feel bad when we do something wrong. Don't we feel bad? We do something wrong. We feel bad. We feel regret.
Everybody?
Yeah. Well, bring that up in a few minutes. There's an exception. We feel bad, don't we? And why is that there? It's like an anchor. God gave us that anchor so we would come home. So we wouldn't drift off and lose sight of Him. Because He's moored right around His holy principles. And so if you moor yourself around that, you're not going to deviate very far. But what we've learned in the world that we live in, and maybe ourselves even, that there's two things we do when we're faced with the feeling like we did something wrong and we want to do something about it because we don't like this idea, this conviction in our heart that's kind of there. We need to do something. And so what us believers hopefully do is we go to the person that we hurt or God, and we apologize. And we say, I was a knucklehead back then, and I made this mistake, and I apologize. And you know what? No matter how they take it, it feels really good. And you do that, doesn't it? Even if the person goes, well, I still don't like you, and they leave. But it feels like a load off. And then you have a new mission. Okay, how do I get them liking me again? Ice cream. That is the trick, right? You have a means to bring solution to the situation, right? But until you deal with the conviction of the violation that you did, ice cream is just, it's of no value. You have to ask for their forgiveness. It's the same with God. He likes ice cream, too. But he doesn't want just ice cream. He wants repentance. He wants us to realize that he's the source of all forgiveness and that he wants right relationship. Right? And it can only be had through repentance. It can only be had through repentance. There's no way. Ice cream will not cover the problem. Somebody's taking notes right there. Ice cream now. But there's another way. There's another way. Our society has created another way. And it's not, thank God. The other way is to redefine the violation to a non-violation. You know, that really wasn't that bad. It was more kind of somewhat could have been an accident on my part. You know, how many times has that guy done the same thing to me? You know what's that rule? What goes around comes around? It feels better now. Level the playing field. We're all bummed, so does that really solve any problem, though?
No.
All you've done is define yourself as a bum. You just redefined your activity, the things you've thought and done to others and to God, as from sin to non-sin. But your conscience is assuaged, isn't it? Feels better now. I've seen our society go this path over the last umpteen years. Back 50 years ago, there were things that are done today that would never have been thought of, even. How did we get here? Well, just little small steps. I'll tell you one way that we got that isn't the way. It wasn't through repentance. It was through redefining God's principles and laws. Over the course of time, we've tweaked. You know, I can remember as a young man in high school and college, our society was wrestling with, you know, sexual freedom kind of concepts and drug-related concepts, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent. And I remember the arguments that I used to get in with my friends about where this would go. And unfortunately, once in my life anyway, I was right. Because I had lots of friends in high school and college, most of which were non-believers. And so we had these wonderful debates. And I kept telling them, look, if you go down this path, you're not going to have to win it if you ever find somebody to marry you, which probably won't even happen, so you don't have to worry about it. But if it does ever happen, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be built with the tools to make her happy and you happy by going down these pathways. And sure enough, that's exactly what our society has done. Now we flip marriages. You know, like we flip pancakes. And think nothing of it. How has our society arrived at this point that we're at today? We've redefined right and wrong. And what we've replaced sin with is what we want in our own behavior, mind, thinking, and action. we're pleasing ourselves and calling it okay. And how has that been working? Not so good, has it? God's goal in all of this is a character change. And our society is not hopeless. It can have a character change. And where it starts is right here. We can have a character change. We can take a look at our own lives and go, how have I diluted? Am I diluted? Are my principles, thoughts, values diluted? Or are they honed in on just God's Word? Because that's pure. Where me could be impure, maybe. I'd like to finish this off. I got 10 minutes. I'm going to do it. I want to finish this off with Walter Martin. When I was a boy, as soon as I got my driver's license, my parents took me to the Presbyterian church. Great church, nice people, not for me. I wanted to go to Ralph Wilkerson's Melodyland. Okay, now when it first started, it wasn't in Melodyland, which is right next to Disneyland. It was kind of towards Fullerton. So I went there, and then they sold the church. They moved to this roundabout thing. It was really cool. And Ralph was fine. I liked him. But he allowed Walter Martin to teach in this big overflow room outside of Melodyland. So as soon as I realized that, I was a huge Walter Martin fan. I started listening to and attending all of Walter's lectures. And he did a much better job than I'm about to do. But he went to scientists of the day. This is like late 60s. And he wanted to verify that what he was about to teach us all was verified by the scientific facts. And this in essence still stands today. You can YouTube this and find in essence the same argument, because guess what? It still stands. So all of what we've talked about in as far as why does anything exist boils down to a much simpler argument, if you will. And maybe you can remember this, because I've remembered this for quite a few years. And it boils down to the four-choice argument. Okay? As far as how many choices we all have for why anything exists at all. Okay? So the first argument is a little bit funny. It's called the solipsists argument. And it goes like this. Well, actually, the only thing that really exists is me. You all are all mirages. Some very nice mirages, some not so nice mirages. Some mirages that I have a rapport with, some mirages that I don't have a rapport with. Now, you're laughing, but in actuality, there's people that believe this. I just listened to a lecture yesterday evening, and it was basically, as I'm listening to this argument, I'm going, this guy is a solipsist. This is Walter Martin's first choice. This guy believes that everything doesn't exist except himself. There's one fundamental problem with this theory. These solipsists have a very difficult time crossing the road without looking. Why bother looking? If everything's a mirage, you can't be hurt. Right? It's just a mirage coming down. That truck coming down, gonna hit you. Just step right in front. No problem. On a scientific level, you can approach it this way. Mirages can be disproven. If everything was a mirage, then you could not prove or predict anything. The easiest thing to predict nowadays is that the sun is going to rise precisely at a certain time in the morning. We can do that with our computers now. We get down to the millisecond when that little crescent's going to rise right above the horizon, right? Well, mirages are not predictable. So the fact that we can actually predict anything astronomical, let alone when your wife's going to be home or anything like that, the fact that you can predict things defeats the entire mirage argument. But for some reason, these guys don't like logic. They persist in this choice. But for us that do like light and truth, we can pretty much go to the bank that I am not, in your case, you are not the only thing that exists, and the rest of us all are mirages. The others are a little more serious. Some people will believe that the universe came from nothing. Of course, this violates the first law. Einstein's first law, there's some other people joining on this thing, but it says that from nothing, nothing comes. Now remember, we define nothingness. Nothingness is not a vacuum. It is stark, naked, nothing. There is nothing. There's no time for anything to even be. Okay, so there's no time, there's no matter, and there's no space for it to occur in. You have to, in order to have matter, you have to have space for it to happen in, right? And for it to happen is a time measurement, isn't it? You have to have all three working together. So in this particular vacuum, in this particular state of being, which we call nothing, scientists have discovered very astutely that from that state, nothing ever comes. And of course, you have the first law working in your favor. So when you spout this off to your friends, showing them as you're working through these four choices, you sound very erudite. Well, first law defeats the Big Bang. Because the Big Bang says, the Big Bang literally says, I have read it and heard Big Bangers say this. Well, we started with nothing. And they defined it exactly how I've just defined it. And then there was an explosion. Okay. I can't get my brain wrapped around nothing exploding. And then the third choice is that it's always been here. Some people, when the Big Bang Theory first came out, the people believed in a steady state theory, which was the theory that believed that it has been here all along. They had some models where they proposed where, okay, the Big Bang explodes, it expands and expands and expands, and then it runs out of energy and it starts gravitational pull, starts forcing everything back together, and it collapses back on itself. And then all of that stuff, you know, your refrigerators and stuff, coming back into that little teeny, tiny little speck of nothingness, caused another explosion. Somebody's shaking their head, and I'm with you. They've completely disproven this theory. There is no fluctuations in and out of the Big Bang Theory. There used to be people that just believed that it has always been here. And many religions, we went through that last week, believe that the universe has always been here. Unfortunately, it violates another law that Einstein came up with, which was the law of entropy. The law of entropy is a very interesting concept. We talked a little bit about it last week. It's a law that says that everything that interacts and uses energy forms a new state that has lesser levels of energy. And then that forms and interacts and has lesser levels of energy. Our universe is losing energy. It's having less and less energy over time. We can see this in all kinds of examples in our own life. You know, when I go, as an example I used last week, when I go and use my computer, if I'm working on a book, I don't wake up one morning going, okay, I'm going to get started on it again, and voila, the computer has finished the book. I'm going, whoa, that's pretty cool. That doesn't happen, does it? What happens instead is I go to my computer and I'm going, what happened to what I did last night? Where is it? And the computer has decided to go, oh, he didn't need that. Something has, I've probably interacted, hurt the computer's feelings somehow, and it no longer likes me, and it threw the last chapter out. In other words, computers are perfect examples of entropy. They never create anything. And they always scramble up stuff that you created and spent hours putting in there. Your car, you know, what's the efficiency rating? Somebody I'm sure knows. It's
about 30%.
30%. You put in fuel, and it has this much energy, and the car has the ability to use about a third of it. What happened to the rest? It just got consumed by heat. You know, all the wear and tear. That's why cars wear and tear up. It's because of all this 70% that gets consumed by things that you're not really wanting, like your tires wearing out, your ball bearings going bad, etc., etc., etc. Entropy is occurring everywhere in our own lives. We can see it as we age. Although some people look really, well, anyway. We can see it certainly on the universal level, right? And this is the point where we want to focus on, because entropy says that it implies a beginning, because the universe is losing energy. So the implication is that it once started with a whole lot more. Let's say trillions of years ago, it used to be one giant ball of sun. It was one giant, and now we're just we're losing energy, and now we have a few flakes of it left, and here we are. We're almost out. Well, entropy, the law of entropy implies there had to be a beginning. So this idea that the universe has always been here is defeated by this law of entropy. So what we're slowly learning, hopefully, there weren't very many questions today, but what we're slowly learning, hopefully, is that the laws of physics, the laws of logic, some of these other topics that we've talked about that are usually talked amongst learned people. There's no platform for atheists, and we'll soon see evolutionists to stand on. Everything, even their own science, works against them. What's the real choice here? We've got the solipsist who thinks everything's a mirage. Everything came from nothing. Everything has always been here. Science has defeated all of them. What's the fourth choice? Well, something came from something. And what's the something? Well, we learned in the moral argument the only thing left standing was that there's got to be a mind. There's got to be a mind, an all-powerful mind outside of time then stepped forward and decided to create some beings that he really would love for them to reciprocate and love him back. Questions?
I just have a,
Just talk loud.
Just talk about.
Talk loud.
okay. When you said nothingness, when you said something created out of nothing, it brought back, I kind of have a little, kind of in on that, because I experienced complete darkness. Complete. I mean, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Your eyes saw nothing but black. And that was so disoriented. I got so disoriented. I almost didn't feel like I had balance. I didn't feel like I had, all of a sudden, I thought, I gotta get me out of here. I mean, it was, that's my like, nothing. That's the way I kind of,
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. People talk about darkness as a thing, but it's not. What is it?
absence of
The
light.
absence of something.
Yeah. But,
Kind of like evil.
but when you see nothing in that
Yeah.
darkness, that I just that to me, that's like nothing. That just,
How do we define evil?
The opposite of good.
the opposite.
It's the absence of good. Well, who defined good? Yeah, that's where it ultimately goes. The absence of good creates evil. The absence of light creates darkness. It's just it's kind of like the same sort of thing with heat. There's no such thing as coldness. It's just the absence of heat. And so the absence of God is a state where you're going to find evil, dark forces.
I always thought that,
Hello? I always, living in the country, and I know this is something that city people don't really have as much as I do, but living in the country, you see the incredible symmetry and the wisdom and the creative aspect of life. All the way from we lay on the roof of our house sometimes and look at the stars because it's so black. And then I walk into the hayfields and I see that there's coyotes going by. There are spider webs that are just, downstrikingly, incredibly meticulous. And all the animals, and it's hard for me to understand how people could, I guess they don't see that. The wisdom that it would take to create all that symmetry that all works together. And when mankind is here, we kind of mess it up a bit, so it doesn't look so perfect. But I think if mankind were taken off the planet just for an hour, we would see how wonderful the whole thing actually works.
Mankind gets caught up in self, doesn't it?
Right.
The self-concerns, too much ice cream, and, this problem, that problem, and the busyness, and the people, and the state of mind of people. Some people suffer from depression, and it's all focused on self, isn't it? And if you are, you could care less about looking at a spider web out in a grain field. But That's where your hope is. Why? Because Romans 1, didn't it say that he's going to reveal your Creator? You can find your Creator in that spider web, in the complexity of that thing. You come to terms with there's no way that thing's happening by chance. Something had to design that. And all of a sudden you're faced with, I wonder if he knows how to talk English. I wonder if he wants to have a rapport with me. Maybe I should try. Kind of an interesting concept. Any other questions? Yeah.
I sometimes say this too to people, and with your Big Bang Theory, that proves that God had to create. Bingo, there it is. Nothing came from nothing, so time, space, matter, you have to have it. So it proves it doesn't work. So it's like an oxymoron, you know. That can prove that God did create it to me. The second thing I always tell people is, you know, all these questions, it's not going to matter how you live your life on a daily basis, because if you have the joy of God and a godly life going on, those things aren't going to matter how the world got created. You have to live that life today. And then the third thing I say is, gee, when you die and you go to heaven, you can ask God all of these questions then, and boy, you'll know it all.
And I wish that that was the case.
I know. It's my simplified version.
Because most of us, let me rephrase it, all of us, God would like to require more from. But he's a gentleman, and he's not going to pull rabbits out of the hat in the case of ourselves. He's going to take advantage of who you are and the efforts that you've put into making who you are and how much you look like him. The more you look like him, he's going, I can work with that. We're going to pull some rabbits out. Because that guy, that gal knows something that I can use, and I can make that person a greater force in my kingdom. And I'm not contradicting what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
You know,
You're just
that
saying.
is exactly where we should have a fire underneath us to know more, because in that knowing, you can be proud. No, in that knowing, you can have expectations of God choosing you. In that skill that you just learned, you can have expectations that God can use you in that as well. You can be an ambassador for him, whether you're going out pounding nails or typing on a computer or sitting at home, you know, doing the chores there. Wherever it is, we all have a responsibility, and God will call. Your phone will ring, but only if you're ready, only if you're prepared. And then, at the end, when the rubber really hits the road, God's going to go, remember the causality argument? This guy that you're having iced tea with, he's going to look across the Splenda and the rest of the accoutrements, and he's going, what did you do with my son? And I hope we have an answer other than, or more than, well, I thought he was a pretty good guy. I hope we have an answer, well, you know, I studied him, and then I invested my time to get to know him. And then he started telling me stuff to do, some of which I didn't like to do. But I did it anyway. I started to integrate all of his principles into my life. Yeah, was I perfect? No. But I tried. And God's going to do this right across the table, isn't it? Amen? Amen. One more question.
If we're going to look at, what? I'm behind you. If we're going to look at darkness and evil as the absence of something, how do we look at Isaiah 45:7 and perhaps Amos 3:6? Okay, Isaiah 45:7, I'll read it. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I am the Lord who does all these things. I like to think of the Bible as revealing no limitations on God. I think that's biblical.
Certainly, God is a master at creating, but in regards to light versus darkness, I was talking in the sense of the physical nature. The way you create darkness is just somebody flipped the switch over there. You remove, thank you, there you go. What happens? You didn't create darkness. Darkness is a state of the absence of light. That's the only point that I was trying to make.
It's created simultaneously. Darkness and light were both created together.
And when light appeared, guess what happened to darkness? If it was on the far side of the earth, then God called that evening, the first day. But there's an understanding in the physical realm of how that darkness, it was basically sheltered from light, thereby you had darkness. So I'm not sure, was there a question in there that I missed?
John,
Just from
Come back at the microphone, please.
you're right.
I was just interested in your response to the fact that darkness and evil are, according to the Bible, God's creation.
Can I answer that?
Not just the absence of something else.
Right, and I think we touched on that a little bit last week. And God does create both because darkness can't occur in nothing. So in the process of creating the time-space matter continuum, he created darkness. Absolutely, I agree with that. He also created evil in as much as he created good. There is no evil in the absence of good. If you don't know what good is, then you have no clue on what evil is. Evil is only defined by the presence of goodness, and then you can compare that to the standard. We know this is good, that fell short, that must be evil. Right? Yeah, good.
I want to address your question. John's right. When Pharaoh was denying the Israelites to go out, God let it go and let it go and let it go. And finally, when we are so evil that we are intent on doing evil, he's going to let us go. Am I right? He's going to let us go and be that depraved mind, as he says. And so what John's saying is right, is that he created both, but he lets us do it and get ourselves into, it's the consequences of what we do. It's always the consequences.
But you're exactly right, though. He did create both, and I concur. But you only have to understand it in the context of those things. Evil and darkness only exist in a state without their counterpart.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
John, we know about entropy. Is there such a thing as absolute zero as long as entropy exists?
eventually, if God would not come back, we would eventually get to absolute zero. Absolute zero is a concept in science. What's the scale?
Minus 273.
Kelvin, thank you. It's 300 and something Kelvin, correct?
No, 0 Kelvin.
It's been too many years, but it's the state where a piece of something, matter, or the entire universe has reached a state where all the molecules within it
It's called heat.
move not at all. See, heat is the measurement of the movement, the vibrations of molecules and atoms. Okay, so everything is not moving at all. And thermometers would measure that as zero. So, yeah, if God would suspend his plan that he's outlaid for us, eventually entropy would win out and we would be at zero, which would not be cold.
John, you noticed that.
I think we're mischaracterizing entropy a little bit. I agree with your conclusion that the universe must be finite in the past. It can't be infinite because of entropy. But entropy is not a destruction of energy. Entropy is just a transference of energy. So energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred or transformed. That's the actual statement of the second law of thermodynamics.
That's right.
And so because of that, to answer the gentleman's question up there, no, the universe would not ever reach absolute zero because energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred or transformed. So heat death is what you were describing, what Greg was saying. There's a point at which the universe would have an even distribution of heat throughout the entire universe, which would make everything extremely cold because there is not enough energy, not enough heat in the universe to heat it adequately. And that's what's described as heat death, which is the end of the universe, because everything would be very, very close to absolute zero, homogeneous exactly, but not absolute zero, because energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be transferred or transformed.
Yeah, there's some interesting scientific arguments in regards to reaching absolute zero. I think it's 273.
Zero Kelvin,
Yeah.
but in Celsius, it's like, negative 2,
Right.
it's negative something ridiculous. Yeah, 270.
The point of the matter is whether you can get 0.0001 degrees above absolute zero or not. The issue is it's going to be cold, and without God, we're all going to need a lot thicker down jackets. Yes.
Okay, I've got a question about creation. Okay, so God created everything with spoken word, right? All creation,
Right?
and Jesus is the Word of God. I got a question about Daniel 12:9-10.
Jesus is the Word of God?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
In the beginning was
Yeshua is the Word of God. Right?
Word made flesh.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Jesus is the Word of God.
Okay, you mean it in that sense. Okay.
Well, I'm just going to ask you a question about Daniel 12:9-10. I'm going to read it real quick if you don't mind.
Sure.
And he said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end." We're in the end times, right?
I lean in that direction.
Okay, so he said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." Okay,
So the whole Bible is the Word of God. It's been around for a long time, like over 1,000 years, right? All the 66 books of the Bible, well over 1,000 years, probably more like 1,900. If the words are closed up, but they're going to be opened in the time of the end for us, so that we can be purified and made white and refined, what does that mean?
Well, Dan, that passage you read there is only specifically applicable to Daniel's vision that he's seeing right then. And he's saying that the insight of and the information contained in this vision I'm giving you, seal up, Daniel, because I'm not going to expose to you the meaning, but I will expose to the people that lived during the times when this vision actually unfolds. I will expose and forewarn them, because that's the purpose of prophecy. It acts as a forewarning of events to come. And we may need to do all kinds of things because of the forewarning. The Bible as a whole doesn't operate that way. What did you ask me right at the end?
Well, it just says that the words are closed to the time of the end. Most of us probably believe that we're in the end times right now. And then it says that many will be purified, made white, and refined because they are gaining this knowledge. So I'm just wondering what words we're supposed to learn to be purified, made white, and refined.
Yeah, I think the made fine, refined, and purified wasn't so much applicable to the words that he said. It was that people will be refined and purified. And what will refine and purify people is God's Word as a whole. As we integrate those principles into our lives, we become holy. And that the word in Hebrew for holy means to be pure. And so we interesting to look and see what that word was there in that text. But I think that there's an uprising in God's family on earth. And I think that they're going in many directions, one of which, the family of God, one of which is that they're deciding that God did not abolish the Torah. And thereby, those instructions are apropos and applicable for today, and from which we can procure pureness and holiness from, which is what the text actually says. That's the purpose of the law, is to make us holy. And I think that it's a harbinger that we may very well be living towards the end of time, that to see this uprising and restoration, what I believe is the pure intention of God, which was to send his Son to restore right relationship, but not to destroy the law which makes us look like him. And I think that he restored his Son so we could be invited back into the family and then learn his ways so we could actually look like we're part of the family. And I think during these days and these times, I think, will God find faith in man when he comes back? And I think there will be. God usually, unfortunately, works with remnants. And I'm not saying that we're all the end all of anything. What I am saying is within the congregations that he has over the world today, I see a restoration of all things Toritic. And that's not accidental. I think people are coming more and more to the fact, and to me it's glaring in the Bible, that all of these concepts that denigrate things that he said and did and promoted in the old were not abolished. They're there for our protection and help us restore right relationship with him. So during these times, it's not surprising to see more people that are believers starting to come back to this truth, and they start becoming stronger in God. Anything else? We're way past. I'm sorry. I stopped talking at 12:30. Let's see. It's your questions that went way beyond. So I want to hear in the lobby that John always.